Hey, it's Juck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. It is showtime, and welcome into Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Appreciate you so much for joining us for a Monday edition of Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Of course, we are here every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. talking Ohio State football, talking college football, always live and interactive. Joining us tonight, my man Tony Gerdeman. I think the only guest we've ever had. I think making his third appearance. Tony, good evening, my friend.
Good evening, Juck, and I'll just let the people know while I've got you here. Some of my favorite moments this season, every Tuesday when you're there at interviews with Ryan Day, afterwards, somebody from the beat comes up and is like, Juck, I'd like to introduce myself, and they bow at you, and you're meeting so many new people, and then this week I get a text, hey, Phil Mattingly from CNN wants to be on my show. I was like, who are you? Like, you got major national CNN. This guy's talking about the presidency like a year ago, and now he's like, I want to talk about Michigan and Ohio State. And it's like, all right, whatever. I don't know what world this is.
Hey, man, you'll always be the king of cool in my world, Tony. That's all that matters, buddy. Tone, it is the week, my man, and you've been jamming. You've been rocking and rolling. My gosh, I think I've seen 5 new Buckeye Huddle podcasts hit the air today, all with you and Tom behind them. And we got something planned on Friday as well. What are we doing Friday? Let's let the folks know.
Well, we are trying to work out a kind of a marathon live stream from the time that we get to Ann Arbor for the team arrival. We'll be doing something live there, and that'll be at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And then we would hand that off to perhaps you and Mark Givler, and you guys can handle that for an hour before we get back from the team hotel to our lovely hotel somewhere in Livonia, and then take it back over for a couple of hours. So maybe something like a 4-hour show on a Friday, talking about, after work, of course, talking about Ohio State, Michigan, and you can lay out all of your concerns and your anxieties and your well wishes and all sorts of things like that.
Sounds fantastic. And yes, we want to keep, we know you guys want to talk as much as you can or hear as much as you can about the game. It's obviously a massive week. Before we get into that matchup, I do want to hit on a couple of things from that Rutgers game. I think that's 2 weeks in a row that we've seen the offensive line look a lot better than they did against Wisconsin and then Purdue. And even though it was 2 pretty poor rushing defenses, it seems to me like when we look at these running backs, they're all finally hitting a little bit of a mojo, a little bit more missed tackles forced, a little bit more creating on their own. Whereas earlier on in the season, it was just, we're going to get what's blocked up for us. And that's pretty much it, except for a rare occasion. Now it feels like you got Bo looking more explosive. He's cutting back, kind of freelancing a lot more, running to space. Isaiah's consistently producing kind of quietly. James Peoples is now 3 weeks in a row looking like just a totally different guy running the ball out there. And part of me wants to get really excited. Part of me is trying to say, tamper it down. It might be a little bit of fool's gold based on what you're playing here. But when it comes down to it, Tony, making a guy miss is making a guy miss. Making a miss forced tackle, that's doing it on your own. And these are all quality football players. Yeah, schematically, these guys may not be great up front. The offensive line may be blowing them back a little more up front, but I feel like the backs are the difference here. And I think that what we're seeing is real with this rushing attack. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's real. It doesn't mean they're going to rush for 256 yards against Michigan, but you're seeing stuff from the running backs that you haven't seen before, like the big cutback from Bo against UCLA, where he took it down to the 1. We haven't seen that before. Generally, he'll just keep running in the direction that he's running. Even this past week, picking and choosing in between the hashes that we haven't really necessarily seen from him. So you're seeing that patience, you're seeing the vision come through. Isaiah West continues to be like, as you said, he'll make people miss. And then you're seeing James Peoples get to the edge. And I asked Carson Hinsman this on last week, and I asked Will Kazmarek, basically, this uptick in the running game, how do we know that's not just a product of the defenses you guys have been playing, because you've not been playing very good defenses? He said, because they also see it in practice. And so if you're seeing it against the Ohio State defense, I would imagine you're going to see it against UCLA and Purdue and such, and Rutgers. So I think that is something to seriously consider. And as Ryan Day has said all season long, the running backs are young. They need opportunities. They just need experience. That way they have stuff that they can go back to. They can rely on the experiences of, just the comfort level. The more comfortable you get, the better you're going to get. And we're seeing them now. I'd say they all seem pretty comfortable and all making the most of their opportunities without trying to do too much, which I think the key is the success. That's the key to success as a whole. You may only get 6 carries. Don't try to get 2,000 yards out of them. Just get what you can, do what you do, make the most of them. Don't try to make too much of them.
You do something I just find torturous to even think about. Watch every single Michigan game and report on it on your Michigan Monday podcast. What do you make of where that rush defense is at right now?
I don't know that they've faced too many good running teams. The 2 best run performances against them this year have been Oklahoma and USC. They lost those 2. Now they got about 75 yards of rushing out of Oklahoma quarterback John Mateer. You're not going to get that out of Julian Sand, but the 2 teams that have been able to run on them consistently have beaten them. And the other offenses they faced have not really been all that good. They started out this past week against Maryland. Maryland ripped off a 20-yard run, like right at Jayshon Barham. And then their next 24 carries went for a total of 51 yards. And that included a 23-yard scramble from quarterback Malik Washington. So they're good. I don't think they're great. I just think it's a little bit like when you look at Ohio State's schedule. They ain't played nobody, Paul. I don't know how many good running games that Michigan has played this year. I think they did they played Nebraska. We know Nebraska has been able to run the ball, and I think they did fairly well there. But you kind of see some sneaky yards at times, and then they'll, negate some of those yards with sacks.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the quarterback who can bust a move for the Buckeyes, we saw the Lincoln package against Rutgers, and they let him throw a couple times. The first one, it was pretty close still in the game early on a 4th and 2, and they motioned out 3 tight ends out to the field and rolled the right-handed quarterback to the left. He had a wide open Jelani. He missed him. He ended up dropping a dime, kind of off balance, and hit Bennett Christian in the hands. He drops it. Got another opportunity to throw to BI, and he was late and a little behind, but he's coming in cold. And man, that's a tough ask. Running the ball, he's very explosive. I mean, he really is. He's kind of everything everybody wanted to see or was hoping we would see based on what we had heard from the Devin Brown package a couple of years ago. Devin Brown did not look like Lincoln. Lincoln looks great running that ball, man. That's a real athlete. That's a top-notch plus athlete. Are we seeing this, do you think, as a smokescreen, or do you think we might actually see this in Ann Arbor? Because I think we're going to see it.
You've spent too much time on it to not use it. That's one of the things that Ryan Day talks about, where the plays that you see in a game, they have practiced and practiced and practiced, and you've invested all of that time. And so you'd like to use those plays in situations. So if the opportunity is there, I think you'll see it. Especially if it's down in the red zone, it gives them a numbers advantage. He can still throw it. You said it, like, he's been pretty accurate being cold, and some of the throws he was asked to make last week were tough.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you're going to necessarily see that. Like, there's no reason to do what they were doing with him and the odd circumstances against Rutgers, but like 2nd and 3 or first and goal from the 3 or the 4, I don't see why not. you've been practicing it, you've been using it. You have to have the confidence that you can do it. It gives them something, gives Michigan something to worry about, but gives you kind of a two-way go with Lincoln, because you can run or throw with him, and he's been effective, I think, in that role.
When I think about it, the times we've seen him run this year, I don't know that he's been stopped at all. Every time, I think he's got the first down or the touchdown, or every time we've seen him run the ball. We do have a super chat tone. TK, thank you so much, TK. Has Tony been off mic at any point today? Tony, I've seen a lot roll in. How many shows do you think you've been on today? I don't think you have been off mic.
I think Tom and I have done 4 or 5 today. Then I was on with Bill and Doug for their Around the Shoe show. And I've been off mic from about, I don't know, 2 until 7-ish, because I was running around doing errands, and then found some time to write Michigan Monday this week. And then here I am, and this will be the last thing I do. Some tea with honey, maybe something, lemon tea with honey, because every year we do so many shows, and like by the Saturday of the game, I just have to do sign language because I can't talk anymore.
You deserve that. You deserve that tea and honey. Tone, 7 balls targeted to wide receivers in that game against Rutgers. Based off the second half of that UCLA game that did not look good with the wide receivers, Julian going 5 of 11 in that second half after Jeremiah played just the first half. If you thought that your star wide receivers might not be playing in the game, don't you think that it would be, all right, we're going to work on getting a little more chemistry with these wideouts? I mean, sure, you want to work some chemistry with those tight ends. You've worked a lot with those tight ends all year long. I mean, you've been playing tight ends, heavy tight ends. You've done everything with the tight ends. We did it for 5 weeks, 6 weeks, until the point where I don't know, man. I think they finally said, all right, we'll switch it up here. Been tons of work with them. Not a ton of work or rotation with the Bryson Rodgerses and Mylan Grahamses of the world. And we didn't see that. That whole thing makes me feel a little bit more confident in the fact that we're at least going to see Jeremiah on Saturday. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment, because I also think that what was the UCLA game, right? UCLA and then Rutgers, that's the order. The UCLA game, you saw them, the back shoulders weren't working to the other non-Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith guys. Yeah. And so I wonder how much of that Julian saying is thinking in the next game, like, well, that's not going to work, so I'll just stick with the safer stuff. And, you don't target the receivers as much because it wasn't working the week before. And then also knowing this is just a temporary thing anyway. Carnell and Jeremiah will be back. And then you just operate as normal. Because I agree, if you don't think those guys are coming back, are you trying to play Mylan Graham more, even though it just sounded like he did not have necessarily a good week of practice, or wasn't consistent enough? You've got to do something to get some athletes out there. And, all credit to David Adolph and his time at Ohio State. But even when he gets open, he's had some drops through his career and his opportunities. So it kind of exposed how thin the Buckeyes are without their top 2 guys, and frankly, without Quincy Porter as well. I think he was missed. I wonder how much he could do if he was healthy without those 2.
It was pretty, I don't want to say shocking. I mean, I guess never really put a ton of thought in. I just always assumed, number one, that Bryson Rodgers was someone who was right there with BI and could potentially come in and really make it happen. And he did make some things happen in the UCLA game. Didn't get a target except for a pass interference in the UCLA game, or in the Rutgers game. But when you look at Mylan, I mean, this is a guy who, a lot of people have been clamoring for all year long. We want to see Mylan. We want to see Mylan. Brandon Innes isn't explosive enough. I mean, we've seen it all. We've talked about it on the boards over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And aside from him not being a slot guy, whatever, you can make him a slot guy. He'd be a really good slot guy. But it just felt, I don't know. I would have assumed that he was probably pretty close and was at the point where Now he just needs some more on-field reps, but when you see him out there, it feels to me like he's probably a little further away than that. And I do think you're right. Quincy Porter being out, Quincy seems to me like so far on the field, he's the most advanced at this point, which is disappointing with Milan. But based on what Ryan Day said just a couple of weeks ago, saying that he's been practicing better. And, every time I hear that for a guy who's, not a freshman, it's like, oh, okay, I got you. And then based on what we saw against UCLA and sitting the entire first half against Rutgers, it doesn't seem like it's going swimmingly for Milan.
Well, and that was just a bizarre game because you could have made the assumption that he was going to start this past week without Carnell there. And we've even seen him in recent weeks playing out of the slot a little bit. He's at Z, and then you also saw him a little bit in the slot. So it's like, oh, clearly he's advancing, and they're targeting him. And no, he's not coming down with those 50-50 balls like Carnell. But when you throw a deep out to him, or you go outside to him, he's making catches. He looks just fine. And then he's looking for something to do after the catch as well. And just even up in the press box, we're all like, why isn't Milan playing? Where's Milan? And then you finally see him when Brandon Ennis gets hurt. And that's the point where Brian Hartline or Devin Jordan there in the third quarter is finally like, okay, go in. So I'm wondering, was he going to play at all if Ennis didn't go down with a little injury?
That's a good point.
It's just bizarre because you had thought that he was doing well. And then one of the first questions was about him afterwards. And that's where Ryan Day is never going to throw his players under a bus. And he's just, saying, just working on his consistency and, things of that nature, all of the kind of coach speak that you give where you kind of know the answer, but you're not going to get the true meat of what the issue is.
Yeah. It's just, I felt like, I don't know, man. It's just like with Brian Hartline running that room. And I guess now he is taking on coordinator duties, and maybe there's some of that too. He obviously said at the beginning, he's going to spend the same amount of time with those guys. And that was the goal. And that was the plan. I just find it hard to believe that maybe he wouldn't be a little further along if Hart was, 100% still just the wide receiver coach. And I feel like the gap was just a little bigger than I thought, like almost to the point where, man, let's see Phillip Bell. He seemed like he was pretty far along in practice. But at any rate, talking about this game, Tony, the line opened at 12.5, which made my skin crawl. It was the same as Georgia Tech on a neutral field. Alabama, just a 5.5-point favorite against Auburn. And they don't have a coach. I couldn't believe it. 12.5. It quickly moved to 9.5, which still kind of sounds, I don't know. It seems big to me. I think I'm scarred from last year, but based on the schedule that Ohio State has played, that is all we hear about is how unproven they are. Ohio State's schedule nonstop. Based on the streak Michigan has going, I think it's pretty telling just how differently Vegas views these two teams. A 9-2 Michigan team, 11-0 Ohio State team, to have that line be so different than the Iron Bowl line.
Yeah, they see it with a cold heart and logic, I guess. Basically,
Yeah,
they don't
right.
see it.
There we go.
They see it. What is happening this year? They don't necessarily worry about last year. But yeah, I was surprised by that number as well, and we've seen it come down, and we'll see what happens when it gets closer to Saturday. What that number is? Does it hit a bottom and then start going back up? But in terms of like, why would it be that high? I mean, look at the Ohio State defense and what offenses have they played? Well, what offense does Michigan have?
Right.
They have a true freshman quarterback. Their best receiver is a true freshman. They've got a sophomore running back who is banged up and day to day, according to Sherrone Moore, but he certainly didn't look day to day when he was down a week ago. He looked okay on the sidelines in street clothes, but who wouldn't? So there's just not a lot of offense there, and Ohio State has a lot of defense. So how, what are you expecting for Michigan? Are you expecting 13, 17, and then would you not be crazy to think Ohio State could score 28, 27 in this game when we've seen Michigan give that up to the best teams they've played this year? And Ohio State will be another one of those best teams, even though it is in Ann Arbor. So, there's maybe a touchdown difference between the two venues, but still it felt high because we think of everything that encompasses this game.
Right.
Vegas is only just looking at the numbers, and the numbers right now, there's not, like, Michigan has been playing poorly essentially and getting away with games. They turned the ball over 5 times against Northwestern and missed 2 field goals. Somehow won that game. You do that against Ohio State, you're going to lose by 5 touchdowns at least.
Yeah. Bryce Underwood, just I don't watch him much. I got to be honest, but it did seem to me in the last couple of games, as I did watch a little bit of Northwestern, a little bit of Maryland, it seems to me like he is kind of layering balls in a little better, changing his speed a little more. It felt early on like he was just rifling everything in. Andrew Marsh looks like he's going to be a bona fide star, and it seems a little bit like maybe they could get something going in the passing game potentially to complement if they can, start rushing for 4.5, 5 yards a carry, and Ohio State needs to adjust to that. So I think my high water mark for them is I was thinking, all right, worst case scenario, they can maybe score 21 points. That would be their best case scenario, worst case in my eyes. So if they score 21, the Bucks need to beat 21 with snow in the forecast, potentially snow flurries, not like snow accumulation, not a lot of wind. How worried do you think Ohio State fans should be about the weather?
I don't think much. They're going to be practicing outside, I'm sure, a little bit. And, flurries, the biggest worry is wind. And for any quarterback, any offense that wants to throw the ball, that's the bigger equalizer. And I think you'd prefer snow flurries to rain. And I mean, they played in rain last week before. It was, sprinkling and drizzling. And so they played in that. I don't, it's going to be 30 degrees and it's not going to be breezy, and there may be some snow flurries. There may not be. So there's no accumulation. So I don't really think there's much to be worried about, even though I know Julian's saying California kid, but he's been in Ohio for, almost 2 years now. So he's practiced in some cold weather. And now, granted, the one throw we've seen him make in a cold weather game, everybody knows it. That's the evidence that we have. Tennessee last year, that's the only evidence we have of what Julian saying looks like in a cold weather game. So maybe it should be 12.5 points the other way.
Sherrone Moore, when he was hired after Harbaugh left, to me, it was, I felt like, all right, this is a guy who on the open market, if his agent was shopping him around to get a head coaching position, maybe would have got a low-level Big 12 job, but most likely like a MAC job. That's kind of how I viewed his resume up to that point. He was running kind of a Stone Age offense, wasn't some like innovative offensive guy, not some super charismatic personality or somebody who really draws you in. They seemed happy, and by they, I mean the Michigan faithful, with him taking that over. They were very happy about it by and large, because it seemed to them somehow like a continuation of the Harbaugh regime, even though the whole Harbaugh regime walked out with Harbaugh. Now they're sitting here at 9-2. They lost both games that they should have lost to USC and Oklahoma. They won all the games they should have won. This to me was kind of their high water mark to come into this game at 9-2. I didn't expect them to be any better than this. In Moore has dumb blunders that most young coaches have. I don't think they're there may be a little more than some other coaches. He's made some dumb blunders at the end of games and seems to have a hard time with clock management. His hires haven't been fantastic. He's finding his way. This is what you get with a new coach most of the time, a guy who's never coached before. That's just what it is. But at 9-2, heading into the game with the opportunity to go to the playoffs with a win, potentially, I'm reading their message boards, man. They want him gone. They want him gone. And I'm so stunned by all this. How do you feel about the job he's done? Because I think, all in all, if we're just talking wins and losses, yeah, they've had an easier schedule this year, but he did exactly what he should have done. He didn't slip up and do what Lincoln Riley did last year. He did what he was supposed to do.
The record is what it is, but watching the games, it's a 5-point win over Purdue, 2-point win over Northwestern, 3-point win at Nebraska. It looks fine-ish, but it's just 24-10 against Wisconsin, 24-7 against Washington, 31-20 against Michigan State. It's not exciting. And that's one of the things I've seen Michigan fans say is there's nothing to rewatch. And I'm thinking, what was it to rewatch with most of the Harbaugh era? Like these are all, the games are all very similar. It's very boring. It's defense and run the ball, and eventually a home run will be hit on the ground. And the passing game is just, it's just there because it's part of the rules. You got to have a quarterback and you got to have receivers lined up. You can only have so many people in the backfield. So I don't see a ton of difference between the pleasingness of the games, but I know Michigan fans don't like it and certainly don't like what happened last year. But again, that's also much of the Harbaugh era. We don't need to talk about the two different Harbaugh eras at Michigan. We know what they were. Sharon Moore right now, last year took them back to the normal Harbaugh era. This year, maybe taking them to a place that Harbaugh never did. And in terms of, without breaking a bunch of rules to get there. So I think it would be huge for Michigan to win this because it may lock up a playoff spot. It kicks Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship. It doesn't alter Ohio State's playoff situation. It gives Ohio State time to heal. Like last year, how the loss to Michigan was beneficial after the fact. This one, you could also see some benefit to it, but nobody's going to take that over the benefits and the joys and pleasures of a win over Michigan.
So after the fact, yeah, it was definitely beneficial in that it galvanized them after, they broke everything down and you built that, you dropped it down to build it back up type of deal. And
you can only do that once.
That's my thought too. Like that's not a repeatable thing, especially the next year. We're talking about now graduating another senior class who leaves without winning the game. And I just think that's going to be a big downer. And when we talk about, who's got the most pressure here, with Ryan Day, with the streak, with his record against them, with the fact that I think a lot of people believe, like me, that if he wins the national championship, that the burden and is going to be off of his shoulders and he's going to coach that game like he coaches every other game. And I think that we are seeing the preparation kind of be more like the preparation for every other game. The routine staying the same. Even the attitude, Tony, in his post-game interviews, it just sounded like after a normal game. There was no anxiety in his voice. And of course, we'll hear him tomorrow. And obviously we'll maybe get a little better feel for that then. Maybe I'm being a little premature, but to me, I feel like we're already seeing signs that some of that weight has been lifted off his shoulders and he's going to coach this game like he would coach normally. There's not going to be some tightness about him.
It's interesting. His preaching to Julian Sayin all year as a young quarterback, do the routine things routinely. And as a team, that's what they're trying to do. And that's the focus. Even Wednesday, we have player interviews. We have not had player interviews on Wednesday for Michigan week in forever. I don't know that we've ever had them. Usually everything is done on Tuesday and just knock it out and let the team focus on Michigan. And Day this year is like, no, we're just whatever. We're doing the same thing we always do. And the routine is the routine. So after practice on Wednesday, there will be interviews and Day will sit down again. And it's on one hand, you say, well, they're treating it just like another week. Well, that's good depending on your perspective. That's bad depending on your perspective. And however the game ends up, you'll either be justified or proven wrong that this was the worst outcome to take, or the worst path to take. When in actuality, having interviews or not on Wednesday does not make Julian Sayin more accurate, or does not make Jeremiah Smith more healthy, or does not keep Peyton Pierce from dropping an interception that could have been a pick six and the difference in the game. But it is interesting. He just wants to keep everything normal, and it's been working. Why change it for 1 week?
Yeah. Do you think there is a disadvantage now that they have played essentially, because of what happened with Penn State, 5 straight games where they were 20 to 30 point favorites rolling into this, that maybe you got some rust playing some real competition potentially? Because there's some of that makes me a little bit nervous. It has felt like just so long since we've gone into a game that I've even been juiced for, that somebody could give them a game. And now you go in from that, just a lull for 6 weeks now, into the biggest regular season game of the year. It gives me a little bit of anxiety, Tom.
I can understand that. What I would say is that when the starters have been in, they've been locked in. And these games, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, everybody knew the outcome, Wisconsin, and yet they were still locked in when they were out there. And they've had that competitive excellence that Ryan Day always talks about. When your number is called, be ready to go. And they haven't once been like, they've never overlooked anybody. They're talking, they talk about how you're guaranteed 12 games. Don't overlook any of them. Don't take any of them for granted. And, uphold the standard. Ryan Day talks about, it's about us. And for about the last month, it's been about them. And just upholding that, wanting to do more, wanting to, that they've increased the grade to be a champion to 83% from 80. And it's about, yes, we recognize the schedule is what it is, but we are still who we are. And it shouldn't matter who we're playing. The standard is a standard. The standard doesn't lower because you're playing Purdue. Standard's up here. Purdue may be here, but standard's right there. Standard's right there for Michigan, whoever. And so I think it's been impressive what they've done. But now they've got to do it for the entire 4 quarters. And you're right, there will be some rust. I think it'll be interesting to see what Carnell looks like, assuming he's back. I do assume that he will be back. Jeremiah Smith, how long can he go? When he's got some tightness, can they keep him loose in a cold game throughout? How much rust is there? How much, that sort of thing where they haven't been out there. Who knows how much they're practicing, if they're practicing right now. So I understand the rust offensively, defensively, but these defensively, they're so locked in at this point that, I don't think there's a concern there for me. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised, but also remember it's Michigan. So something's going to happen. Yeah. Something is going to happen, and just accept that. And then what else can Michigan do on top of that?
Yeah. When I look at them defensively, and when we kind of go back to the Wisconsin game, the Purdue game, the offensive line really seemed to struggle with stunts and twists from Purdue level athletes. And now you're going against Michigan, and obviously Wink's got it cooked up, man. He's going to try his best to confuse this offensive line, and they've been susceptible to it. And I'm not just Tagra and Phil on the right side, even Montgomery has as well. And I think my biggest concern here for the Ohio State offense is just keeping Julian clean and from getting hit. And if they can do that and run for 3.5 yards a pop off that left side, I think this ends up in getting past that 21-point mark. That might just be the golden one there. But that's my key to the game here. Do you have any keys that you think Ohio State needs to focus on to win the game?
So your key is
keep Julian.
outrush Michigan, and by any means necessary. No, I mean, that's been my key all year long. Protect Julian Sayin in this game and you will win, because Michigan's secondary is not very good. And watching this Maryland game, Jair Hill, Michigan's corner, got beat deep 3 times that I saw, and there was only 1 completion on those throws. And the others were just, one was behind, one was overthrown. If Julian Sayin has receivers that are beating Michigan deep, expect him to hit more than he doesn't, or expect him to hit as many as he doesn't, and that will be plenty. Maryland missed 2 touchdown passes that cost them. Say they kicked a field goal after one of them. Say it cost them 11 points, and Ohio State's probably going to hit those when they get an opportunity to. But you got to give him an opportunity. So keep it back in. CJ Donaldson, whomever, probably your senior running back to help, and just do what you can to attack. And they may be trying to limit the downfield attack. Then stay patient. And we know this Ohio State passing game is patient. And Julian Sand can dink and dunk and take 8 yards to Jeremiah Smith all day long, or perhaps Carnell Tate. Michigan gives up a lot of yards relatively to tight ends. Ohio State's got a pretty good tight end, just coming off of a 100-yard game, the first for an Ohio State tight end since 2013. So don't be surprised if Max Clare has another big game.
I think he might be key. I do too. When you talk about Jeremiah staying loose, I feel like based on Ryan Day being asked if there was maybe a further setback in the UCLA game for Jeremiah, and he said, I don't believe so. That meant that he went into that UCLA game with whatever was ailing him that we watched him limping with after the game. And if he was allowed to play in that game, and I think he probably wanted to and pushed to play it, and if they allowed him to, it means there's absolutely no way that he could have furthered that same injury, whatever the heck it was. So that said, when he was on the field against UCLA, I mean, I don't think you could really tell at all. I couldn't tell that there was anything different about him, and I'm hoping that that's what we see. But like you say, got to get through halftime without having a massive limp, that downtime. Maybe he'll be riding the bike in the locker room the whole time or something to keep himself loose. But I am happy to hear that you feel good about Carnell as well, because I felt like that one has just been a little bit more mysterious. It just felt a little bit more different. And obviously, we're a traumatized fan base when it comes to stuff like this, Tone. You know what I mean? There's a lot of trauma here when it comes to this, particularly with a wide receiver. And Carnell went from a little tightness in warm-ups to we haven't seen him in a month. It's crazy.
I think there's just been extreme caution, because remember we were just talking about these games that nobody cares about, and and so I think there's some of that. I think the Jeremiah thing is they may have always been planning to give him the Rutgers game off, but you didn't want to necessarily give him too much time off, and so you play him against UCLA so that he doesn't miss 2 games. Whereas Carnell Tate, it's a different type of injury, and it's one where maybe I think more time off is better, whereas Jeremiah's is, it's just a matter of getting it loose, and then he's good to go. And certainly time off will help. That's why he was off last week, and we'll see what the limp looks like on Saturday. And with him, it's, when he gets to the stadium, it's probably going to be about 25 degrees and a little chilly, but they'll work it out and they'll get it going. But yeah, I think both guys. Now, the other question is, how long can they go? Can something happen where one of them or both of them get knocked out and they need extra treatment, or they realize that, I was good to go and now something happens and you re-aggravate something or aggravate something else. So I think, just because they play doesn't mean they'll finish, but, I do think they're going to both be good to go. And then, whatever happens after that, they'll be good to go with that as well.
The narrative about Julian saying to a lot of people as this Heisman race is kind of going on was, yeah, sure, he's got a crazy completion percentage. Let's see him without his alien wide receivers. And we see him in the second half against UCLA go 5 of 11. And the game against Rutgers, he's under 70%. And it's kind of given them some confirmation. And he's maybe, that award is so much about narratives. Mm-hmm. And right now, it seems like he's probably taking a little bit of a hit. But if he can play a really good game, win this game, and obviously then in the Big Ten championship would need to beat Mendoza head to head. I still think that finishing like that steals the momentum away. And I feel like we get a little too caught up and forget kind of how we're going to feel after that, because there's a lot of people right now that are dismissing okay, he's lost it. I'm seeing it a lot. Like, yeah, it was fun. It's over now. I think that all changes if both of those things happen, provided he has a good game, and especially if he can win one of those in a way in the fourth quarter where he is relied upon to do something big. Without a doubt, I think he wins it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think probably a month or so ago, I just started pointing at these two games, Michigan and perhaps Indiana. If Julian Sain is going to win the Heisman, it will happen against Michigan and Indiana, because the Indiana needs to be there. In terms of like what he's done the past 2 weeks, I think you can also chalk that up to the fact that you lost an entire recruiting class of receivers, the 2022 class, which should all be seniors this year, should all be fourth-year players. They weren't there to help out. You lose Noah Rogers, who should be a junior. Like, he should be here, or a guy like him should be at Ohio State, so that you're not playing a former walk-on the majority of the snaps. David Adolph, again, that's any position. You shouldn't be down to a walk-on, former walk-on, and as a starter at Ohio State. And so that's one of the reasons that Julian Sain had the numbers that he did, but also because they weren't even, these last two games, I think these are the first two times he's been under 200 yards passing, first two times in terms of in a row, first two times he's been, under 300 yards passing in, I think, back-to-back games or whatever. And yeah, it's because those two guys weren't out there, but all of that gets forgotten if he shows up against Michigan and lights it up and does the same thing against Indiana. Because against Indiana, it's head-to-head, him and Fernando Mendoza. The only guy that can win it at that point, if those two guys play in the Big Ten championship game, is Jeremiah Smith. He's the only other guy besides those two, in my opinion, that could come in and win it, unless everybody stinks and Jeremiah Love gets it for not playing, something like that. Because I think Ty Simpson, he's kind of dropped off a bit. Mm-hmm. But the hype is going to be so big for that Big Ten championship game that you'll have the Heisman voters just basically waiting, at least those not in the southeastern portion of the country who already have Ty Simpson written in first.
Right.
You're waiting to see what that game does, and whoever wins, this is going to decide my vote, unless, somebody falls just short but has a miraculous game, or, like we saw, Fernando Mendoza have a bad game until a great drive in the fourth quarter at the end, and everybody forgets everything before that, even, throwing a pick six against Oregon, but then leading Indiana down the field, and everybody forgets that. So if you can cover up your mistakes, voters have very little ability to remember things. They only know what they're seeing at that moment.
It's just a moment, man. It's just that now it's just fighting through adversity. Doesn't matter if you put yourself there, put your team there. It's almost childish, to be quite honest, Tony. Really, it is. It's like, I don't know, they see candy or something. It's strange.
I gave up on the Heisman when Orlando Pace didn't win it, and that was when I realized, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah. My Browns, Cleveland Browns, played the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday, Tony, and Sunday night, Chip Kelly got fired. And I'm just sitting here thinking today, you lose Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly after the national championship at Ohio State. Jim Knowles is now on a lame duck staff. We don't even know if he'll be retained. Chip Kelly doesn't even make it the whole season. It's really kind of strange looking back after having lost both of those guys that they are both now kind of, what are you going to do up in the air? A lot of people clamoring for Chip to come in as an advisor. They think that he's just going to come help Ryan out. Last one here, I'll get you out on this. What do you think are the odds that Chip has anything to do with this team?
Well, Brian Day will be asked about that on Tuesday, I'm sure. I
You
don't
think
think
so?
it's. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think it's out of the. I don't think it's unrealistic. Just they have guys come in and, hey, what do you see? Come on in.
Mhm,
You're not doing anything. Just what do you see? Maybe in terms of the self scouting type of thing after the regular season or after the Big Ten championship game when you've got some time. I could definitely see him coming in and doing something like that. I don't think it's automatic. Do you really want to? I'm I'm sure Ryan Day's already called him just to say, "Hey, how you doing?"
mhm.
But also, somebody just got fired, so you're going to be like, "Hey, can you come help us out?" Maybe that's that. Maybe that's the best way to reach out in terms of, "Hey, you've always got a home here. You've always got an office here." So it wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, yeah, and you got that assuming you get to the Big Ten championship game, uh, 3 weeks if you win that, where you're not I mean, that actually could kinda line up really nice time-wise,
What would shock me more is
timeline-wise.
if you had Jim Knowles do the same thing.
Right. All right, brother. I appreciate you coming on as always. I will see you tomorrow down at the facility. Have a fantastic night. Get your hot tea and honey, buddy.
Will do. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Thanks, buddy. Our man Tony, man, is he fantastic. Uh, I do the majority of shows I do by myself, and every once in a while I have a guest on or do it with a partner. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth with some guests. Some will boom, boom. It's a good back and forth. Tony's always the best, man. It's always so smooth. He always adds just enough good chemistry and fantastic stuff. A couple of super chats. Uh, Buckeye swag. Matt Patricia is going to mentally dominate Underwood. I see a couple of turnovers at least. Man, I'm with you. Like Patricia has honestly taken the last 5 weeks off. It seems like he's not done anything that we saw early on in the season against teams that could actually have the potential to hurt Ohio State offensively. And it's just been so basic and honestly so boring. Like the style of defense they were playing early on was so exciting. We haven't seen it. I mean, the dude's got to be itching to do something fun. He's itching for it. And we're talking about a true freshman. Now, they say a lot of times this stage in the season, you're not really a freshman anymore. This guy's never seen anything like what he's about to see with the athletes and the aggressiveness. I mean, it's his first time playing in the game. All of us, I mean, freshmen always get a little rattled just by seeing that. And he is a little more advanced for a freshman. I'll give him that. But yeah, I'm totally with you. If he turns the ball over a couple times, I would not be surprised in the least, my man. So anyway, yeah, Tony is a machine this week. I've seen him drop a ridiculous amount of shows, and he is fantastic. Stan Brooklyn says, "Why would you bring in the chipster to look over Brian's shoulder? Dumb." Yeah, I think it would be more not as you're bringing him in to help the offense, but more as he's kind of helping you self scout, etc. Also, Brian has a whole lot of respect for him. Chip takes OC job again if Hartline leaves. Yeah, I don't know that Hartline is leaving. I guess we'll see when we have the trickle down effect. The coaching vacancies, they're about to get filled up, right? So once those all get filled up, well, now whatever jobs those guys were in are now vacant. And then when those get filled up, well, now you got to go hire somebody to fill those, and those jobs are open. So you got this trickle down effect. And at some point, you're going to go at the stage where all of a sudden, well, now maybe you got multiple schools at this level who are trying to hire Hartline. I don't suspect he leaves for any job in tier 2 because all he's got to do is stick it out for 1 or 2 years more as a successful offensive coordinator. And then the next big time job that opens up, he might be an actual candidate for that. at least considered a little more. Like, I think this year, if he had been the offensive coordinator for the last 3 years, now all of a sudden he's getting more of a serious look at Penn State, regardless of whether he's been a head coach or not. But you had that he's not been a head coach and that he just took over the offense. A lot of people are hung up on that. So anyway, I do appreciate you guys so much for joining me on a Monday at 8 p.m. on Buckeye Huddle Primetime Live. We will be back, of course, on Wednesday. And stay tuned to Buckeye Huddle as we will continue to pump out the content all week long for Hate Week. Tomorrow morning over at Juck on Bucks, got a conversation, another one that I did. So today I did a conversation with Phil Mattingly. That's over there. And then tomorrow I just finished up another one right before I got on with Tony. So that will be on tomorrow morning. In addition to our other stuff, we had some recruiting news. Obviously the decommitment of Cam Brickle, which brings the defensive line class down to 5 guys. There was 6, now 5. And Cam Brickle, if you've been watching any of our recruiting coverage, not a surprise at all that he is not going to be in this class in the end. We've been kind of talking about that for a little while now as he transferred down to IMG before the season started. It was his 4th high school, which is kind of ding, 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 red flags right there. But a little different when it's IMG as you're, going to level up the competition. Well, the level up in competition resulted in him not even starting as a senior at high school, which is not great. That's not a great thing if you're an Ohio State recruit, unless maybe there's a 5-star ahead of you. There's not. There's actually a 3-star ahead of him, and that 3-star committed to Georgia, which, hey, I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. But the production was bad. The film wasn't great, and he ends up visiting Maryland on Friday. Sayonara, my man. So he's out, and the writing was kind of on the wall ever since Ohio State got back in on Emmanuel Ruffin, who they had originally passed on, and he ended up committing to Colorado and then decommitted to Colorado. Now he's in the class. So essentially Ohio State switched out Cam Brickle for Emmanuel Ruffin, and that is a big upgrade. So I like the defensive line class a lot. I think Kari Wilder is an absolute stud, and he is going to play a lot as a freshman and has the potential to be the next big-time great Ohio State defensive lineman, and he's going to play in the Caden Curry role, and it's going to be fantastic. Then you got Drake Quinn with him on the edge, and at 3-tech, you got Damari Simeon, who is a big-timer, top 10 defensive lineman at Rivals. And then at 1-tech, you've got Emmanuel Ruffin out of Bessemer, Alabama, a top 200 kid. And then you got the mega man out of Glenville, Jameer Perez, at 6'4", 340 pounds. That's a valuable asset. Not a super highly rated guy. Doesn't matter. Gives you the body to be able to do something different and have a little more versatility. So at any rate, I appreciate you guys. Have a fantastic night. Buckeye Huddle Primetime out.